The story begins with Sera, the most famous and sought-after actress in the 1990s. Her fame is so great that even the police are captivated and never miss her dramas. One day, an old man came to the police station and reported he was scammed. No one notices him until he mentions the famous actress I Am Sera. When they hear her name, all the police officers become interested in the case because their favorite actress was being accused. The man's contract appeared real, leaving police no choice but to investigate. Everyone was fighting to do it, so to avoid sending just one officer, they decided to have her come to the station. But everyone was too shy to call her, afraid of being rejected by their favorite actress, so they gave the task to Cheol, since he was the rookie at the station. He makes the first attempt and, as expected, no one answers. Promised a month of vacation, he does everything he can to contact her. Meanwhile, Sera took care of her collaborators' love problems. Though very famous, she remained humble and always helped her friends when she could. After a tough day at work, Cheol reaches her and tells her she's been reported and must visit the police station. She tells him that it was probably her father who committed all that fraud, since her real name isn't Sera. That's just her stage name. So it wasn't necessary for her to go to the police station, but the police officers wanted to meet her. So he insists, but she tells him she'll talk to her manager and then hangs up the call. His colleagues were upset and told him that he had to make her come at any cost. The officer tries everything, calls her daily, and she, fed up, begins ignoring him. One day, she had to shoot a commercial, but her partner was a less famous actress, but with a huge ego. Seeing how badly she treated her staff, she decides to leave. The actress pleads with her not to leave, saying it's her first commercial, and if it falls through, she'll have to beg her on her knees for help. Sera, being a good person, decides to do her the favor. After filming ends, the country's most famous actor gives her his number, but she deletes it since she's also famous and not interested in dating. The actress we saw gets furious because she had asked him for his number and the actor simply ignored her. Later, we see that Officer Cheol doesn't give up and keeps calling Sera insistently, but she keeps ignoring him. I wanted to see who'd tire first, but Officer Cheol was too stubborn and wouldn't give up a month's vacation. Later, we see that Sera's agent gets her a meeting with a very famous director. But it was with bad intentions. The director offered her a leading role in his next movie if she spent the night with him. Sera, furious, refuses to do what he asks. Her agent pleads for her to do it just this once, but Sera questions how she can be sure it won't happen again. She knows she'll be removed from the movie, but seeing her little sister reminds her she became an actress to support her. Then, Officer Cheol calls her again. This time, she answers and tells him she had a really bad day. He shouldn't constantly harass her just because she's a celebrity. He should remember she's a person first, not just an actress. Officer Cheol feels guilty and apologizes. As he's about to hang up, he hears her crying. Could it be? With no one else to talk to, she begins confiding in him. She says she met a terrible person who treats actresses like toys. And, to keep her dignity, she gave up a major role. Officer Cheol says she did well by staying true to herself. Hearing this, Sera feels better and says she'll go to the police station to clear up the misunderstanding because he listened to her. When they find out, the station throws a party, excited to finally meet their favorite actress. When she arrives, everyone is amazed by her presence. They even decorated the interrogation room so she would feel comfortable. All the police officers were excited, but Officer Cheol didn't seem as enthusiastic. The charges against her weren't serious at all. She just had to say her real name and accuse her father. The officers promised to resolve this misunderstanding quickly. As she was leaving, the police officers asked her for an autograph. When she finished, Officer Cheol also wanted one, but since she was already leaving, he didn't dare to ask. Later, there was an event to honor the best actors. The envious actress was in the spotlight, but when Sera arrived, all cameras focused on her. This made her very upset, and she got even angrier when she found out that Sera was the winner for Best Actress. Not only that, she was also the youngest winner to date. When she goes up on stage, Sera thanks her family, her fans, and sends a special thank you to the officer, Cheol, who encouraged her during a very difficult time in her career. Everything seemed perfect, like the happy ending of a drama. But her enemy was really furious. She hated her with all her strength, to the point of wishing her dead. When she returned home, Sera suffered a terrible accident. But it seemed it wasn't an accident, but something premeditated. Her enemy believed she wouldn't get caught. Suddenly, Sera falls into a coma, The whole country was shocked because the most famous actress of the time was in critical condition. 25 years went by and now Sera is 50 years old. She remembers the accident clearly. That's why she thinks she's still in 1999. When her roommates call her ma'am, she doesn't understand why they call her that, so confused, she runs away from the place. She suddenly bumps into Detective Cheol, borrows his glasses and gives him puppy eyes so he stays quiet. He doesn't recognize her and refuses to lend them. She ignores him and walks on. She suddenly sees many people with strange devices, but can't find any public phones no matter how hard she looks. Detective Cheol suddenly arrives to retrieve his glasses. She tells him that she'll pay for them when her manager arrives and that she'll also give him an autograph. He tells her not to play dumb and to give them back immediately. When he doesn't recognize her, Sera indignantly says she's the best actress of the era. But Detective Cheol still doesn't know her, since she looked so different. He tells her to stop playing around and give his glasses back right now. She tells him she'll give them back later because she's afraid of being recognized. When he tries to take them, they fight, so the guards intervene. As a detective, he has them take her away. Later, he speaks with the doctor, who asks, "Who is Sera?" He says she's the country's most famous actress, but the doctor disagrees and uses her real name. Sera was not in a coma for 25 years. She had another traffic accident similar to the one after she won the award. That's why her mind reverted 25 years and she forgot everything from that period. Retrograde amnesia. She thought it was 1999 and that she was still the most famous actress in Korea. When she learned it was 2025, she laughed, thinking it was a prank. But seeing her older reflection, she realized it was real. After feigning, she believes it was a dream and finds her friends as before. But when she wakes up, she touches her hair and realizes that's not the case. She was now a lady, no longer the famous actress Sera. She asks her companions if anyone recognizes her, but none know her name or how famous she was. Detective Cheol is seeking more information about the crazy woman who took his glasses. We also see Sera's former manager, who is now an important businessman, and he didn't even know if she was still alive. When Sera steps outside, she finds the world completely strange and unfamiliar. Confused, she walks down the street and is nearly hit by a car. Detective Cheol saves her. Crying, she begs him, insisting it's all a dream because she can't understand what happened to her life. She doesn't know why she quit acting if she was the best actress of her time. Here we see how Detective Cheol did approach Sera when she went to the police station. As he was about to ask for her autograph, he noticed her many wounds and chose to treat her instead. Realizing someone truly cared, she began to see him differently. But since she had to leave, they couldn't talk longer, though she promised they'd meet again. Back in 2025, we see that the manager had completely lost contact with Sera. She vanished 25 years ago and no one knew anything. That's why, when he found her at the hospital, he wanted to see if it was really her, but when he tried to follow, she was already gone. For his part, Detective Cheol decided to help Sera, so he takes her home. When he arrives at the place where she lives, he is surprised as she now lives in a student building. Cheol tells her that nowadays, people who didn't study also live in a place like this, since it's very cheap. When she enters the building, a big guy greets her, saying he was looking for her and thought she had left without paying. She suddenly acts kindly toward the man, surprising him greatly even though she had forgotten everything. She has to be sweet and kind, just like she was in her old days. She enters her room and feels sad seeing her future life. Then, Cheol returns to work. He was demoted and, despite being a detective, reassigned to the traffic department. While tossing trash from his car, he suddenly notices Sera's purse is there. When he checks, he notices a strange card and starts doubting if it's really her. Back with Sera, she had a cell phone, and the manager helped her unlock it. He tells her that now cell phones have facial recognition, something she thinks is absurd. She wants to call her sister, but recalls the hospital said her sister wanted nothing to do with Sera. That's why she gives up and goes to find food instead. Since she'd been in the hospital, she had nothing and could only find some noodles. Then a student arrives who had a tablet. She thought it was a computer, so she asked for help to look up information about herself. That's how she discovers that she disappeared 25 years ago. No one knew where she was, and the last news about her was from 20 years ago. That's why nowadays she had been forgotten. That's how she realizes that after her accident, no one heard from her again. But in the news on television, she sees that her rival is now world famous and has even been invited to the Cannes Film Festival. After Sera vanished, she replaced her and took over all her projects. I'm Sera. With no rivals, she became her generation's most famous actress. Meanwhile, the detective, Sera, but the building guard refuses to give him information. Since he was a tough cop, he gives a mean look, and the receptionist lets him through. But Sera wasn't in her room. She was on the rooftop trying to call her sister. When he sees her, the detective thinks she wants to take her own life, so he goes after her. But he trips on a banana peel and they both end up falling off the building. Fortunately, a tent below cushioned the fall, but it broke and they both landed in the recycling truck. She gets scared and thinks he's dead, so she gives him cardiopulmonary resuscitation to revive him. When he wakes up, she scolds him for trying to kill her. He tells her that she should actually thank him because he tried to save her. Due to the loud screams, the garbage man stops the truck and tells them to get off, thinking they were just fooling around. Both of them are very embarrassed. That's why the detective returns his wallet and asks if he knows a restaurant that seemed suspicious to him. She tells him no and asks him, please, not to see each other again. When he gets home, he checks his cards and discovers he used to visit a bun shop. The next day, she wants to go, so she takes a taxi. But it turns out it was too expensive and she didn't have much money. She gets out and wants to use the subway, but since she was famous, she'd never used public transportation. At the subway, she tries to act like everyone else, but is caught and detained for not recharging her card. She couldn't remember anyone. She calls Detective Cheel repeatedly, just as he did 25 years ago until he finally answers. In the end, Officer Cheel pays the fine to get her released. He is very upset because she didn't even apologize, so in the end, he blocks her and tells her not to call him again. Afterwards, Sera reaches the bun shop, which turns out to be her sister's. Seeing her working hard, he's surprised she ended up this way and asks what happened. Tutors, did you sell buns? Her sister says not to act clueless. She knows exactly why she ended up this way. Her niece arrives and asks about her dad. It turns out her sister was a single mother, and her niece was just like her at that age. That's why she was upset with her, saying she didn't know how to raise her properly. Her sister gets upset and tells her she'd better leave later. While she's feeling down, her boss calls her. Sera had a job, but since she couldn't remember anything, she had to ask where to go. It turns out she works. She worked as a cook at her niece's school. She peeled the radishes. Though she didn't consciously remember how, her hands knew what to do. She finished everything automatically. When she serves the food, her niece notices but pretends not to know her. Sera understands and speaks quietly to avoid embarrassing her. After her shift, her boss gives her kimchi to take home. On the bus, she wanted to sit down, but a girl didn't want to give her the seat. Suddenly, the bus stops abruptly. Kimchi, the girl who didn't give her the seat, ends up all covered in food. Meanwhile, Sera's niece wanted to be an idol and auditioned at Do-won's company, but he believes she'd be better as an actress. But before he can act, he's called to renew the contract of his top actress, Sera's rival. When she disappeared, they had worked together to get to their current position. But Do-won offered her a contract with lower pay. Outraged, she says she's not treated like Korea's top actress. Do-won responds that she's too old to earn as much now. The same thing. She threatens to quit, but Do-won tells her she can't do it because Sera could come back. Apparently, the two of them conspired to push her out of the scene and build their own careers. Therefore, the actress has no choice but to accept. While Detective Cheel was running a sobriety checkpoint, a drunk driver refused to take Sera in. In the end, the drunk tried to attack him, so he had no choice but to give him a good beating. But since he was already older, he hurt his back. When he goes to the doctor, he tells him about Sera and that she was his crush, like many young people of that time. Also, it turns out that he worked at the hospital where she had been admitted. Due to that conversation, the detective wants to further investigate the case of the woman who claimed to be Sera. He discovers her accident wasn't accidental, as the driver had been lurking near her building. Also, the camera in his truck shows that he was acting very suspiciously, which is why he thinks it could be a premeditated crime. When he calls Sera, she tells him that the truck driver contacted her to reach a settlement. But he arranged to meet her in a very dark alley with no witnesses. Because of that, the detective asks her to come back home quickly, but there was nothing to worry about because her stalker only wanted to take pictures of her. The detective arrives just in time to rescue her. Frightened, she asks for help, and he agrees, saying it's repayment for what happened on the rooftop. The next day, he starts investigating if there are any cameras in the alley, but none of the shopkeepers had one. So he goes after a car that was parked incorrectly. The driver, having several tickets, tries bribing him with dashcam footage. When reviewing the video, we see that the stalker was a paparazzo who was only approaching her to take pictures. But things don't end there. Apparently, he had been following her for a long time. He was a mobster. Come back. Meanwhile, Sera had trouble. In the dormitory, a girl had lost her wallet and thought that the lady had stolen it, since many people had seen her trying to enter that room. But she tells them it was because she was half asleep. The girl obviously doesn't believe her, so she starts checking her things when she wanted to check her room. The detective arrives, says he's there to restore order, and asks to check the cameras. That's how they discover the girl. Salvadora, after learning the truth, demands an apology for being wrongly accused. Everyone apologizes to her, but she still feels bad and offers the detective a drink. Both of them start talking about the past and how beautiful it was to be young. Suddenly, Sera feels bad because she used to be the brightest star in the sky, but now she's dimmer than a rock under the sea. Then, the detective tells her who has been following her, asks if she knows him or if she ever noticed anything strange. She says no, or at least she doesn't remember. The detective warns her that she needs to be careful, at least until they manage to catch him. The next day, Sera goes to work, but this time with a better attitude. Even though she didn't remember anything, her body did. That's why she finishes first. Then she talks to her niece, asks her why her mom hates her, and the niece answers that she doesn't know. She just said one thing, that her sister ruined her life. When Sera hears this, she can't help but feel bad, so she goes to visit her father, who was in a nursing home. Because he was suffering from dementia, he doesn't recognize her, or at least not her older self. He does recognize her younger self, the one who was a famous actress. Here we learn her father's mind was also stuck in the past. When she leaves, we learn her sister had been paying the bill for a long time since she hadn't paid it. When she finds out about everything, she starts to cry. Had it happened, or at least not to young Sera? At the same time, we see the detective interrogating the driver who caused Sera's accident. Though she was discharged, he remained in the hospital. This was odd as he hadn't had any serious injuries. That's why Cheol thinks he stayed in the hospital on purpose, because he was hiding from someone. When he leaves, he asks the nurse to notify him of any changes with the patient. He asks if Sera went for her treatment, and the nurse says she canceled it. When he calls her to ask why she did it, Sera tells him that she doesn't have any money, that she has a lot of debts to pay, and that she already feels fine. Hearing she feels fine, the detective asks her to meet at the accident site, suggesting it might help her regain her memory. But when they get there, she remembers nothing. At night, Sera's sister scolds her daughter for repeatedly running away from school to audition for an entertainment company. The girl tells her mother that she's not good at school. Hearing this, the famous idol can't help but think of her older sister. The hardest part for her was that her daughter had been accepted. Meanwhile, Sera was tired of recalling her past. Suddenly, they see the news that Yuyan had won the award at the Cannes Festival, an award she had dreamed of winning someday. Her worst rival was living what she had always dreamed of. But despite everything, she didn't feel anger, but rather a deep sadness. That's why she decides to return to acting to recover everything she lost in these 25 years. The next day, the detective remembers how the rumors spread after Sera's disappearance. Each person came up with their own version. Her fans turned against her and attacked her in every possible way, but the detective never did that. He always argued with everyone to defend her. Seeing her determination, he briefly saw the Sera he had once loved. Sera wanted to find her former collaborators, so she bribed a girl to help with the investigation. It turns out that her makeup artist was now very successful. Her beauty salon was very famous, and you had to book months in advance. Her stylist was also very successful. She became a famous stylist and an internet celebrity. Do-Won, her manager, was the most successful. He founded his own entertainment company and became a billionaire among the team. She struggled to make ends meet. Yuyan worked with Sera's former team. Although they never got along, they had to lay the groundwork to grow their businesses. Or at least, they had to pretend to get along while they were with Yuyan. Later, Officer Cheol visits his former police station. He was demoted for refusing to turn a blind eye, which made him dislike that place, but he had to return to ask for something. The case of Sera's accident 25 years ago. The woman claiming to be Sera was actually his first love, the renowned actress Sera, who vanished 25 years ago. Because of that, his heart starts beating again. He can't help but feel nostalgic since she disappeared without even saying goodbye. Officer Chael hesitates to reveal who he is since it's not the right time, but chooses to give her a hint. He repeats what he told her 25 years ago when they met at the police station. Sadly, she doesn't remember, not the way Officer Chael wanted. On her part, we see that the stylist was worried because there were rumors that Sera had come back the next day. Sera. She watches Yoo Jung's speech after receiving the award at the Cannes Festival. This time she was really angry because her speech was exactly the same as the one she gave when she won the Best Actress award. That's why she can't stand it and ends up breaking the television. Then, more bad news comes to Sera. It turns out that the girl from the bus is suing her, and since she didn't have any money, she wanted to settle things peacefully. But Officer Chael wasn't answering her, so she has to go to the police station alone. Instead of getting violent, she calms down and uses her artistic skills to make everyone believe it was an accident and that she's actually just another victim. The officers are moved and tell her that she needs to talk to the lady so they can drop all the charges. Officer Chael accompanies her when she meets the lady. They explain it was an accident, but the lady insists her daughter was traumatized and demands they pay for the psychologist. Officer Chael decides to lie to her and tells her that the computer experts have already reviewed the video and determined that it was all an accident. If she goes to court, she'll just waste money and time. That's how he manages to convince her, and Sera only has to apologize to her since they solved her problem. Sera invites her to celebrate with food, and the officer suggests having soup. When she visited the police station, once again, he tells her the same thing he told her 25 years ago. This time, Sera remembers the officer from back then, but she doesn't realize that he is the officer. Chael? After finishing eating, Chael offers her his glasses because he was afraid someone would recognize them. But she tells him no because she thought he was making fun of her. The following day, Sera visits her old friend. When she gets to her salon, the receptionist tells her she can't enter without an appointment. Sera tells her that she just wants to talk to an old friend when she says she's the owner. They all think she's crazy because Tae-suk only met with celebrities and she looked very disheveled. So they want to kick her out, but Sera gets angry and says they can't look down on her. She repeatedly tells them she really knows her boss. But since she was poorly dressed, no one believes her, so a big scandal breaks out. Then Tae-suk arrives. He doesn't recognize her since she looks completely different. When Sera reveals her friend's identity, he thinks she's crazy, since Sera supposedly vanished 25 years ago. But her friend tells him her secrets, and that's how he realizes she is truly his friend. I am Sera. The first thing he does is ask her what happened, why she looks so disheveled. Then, both friends catch up. Sera tells him that she doesn't remember anything from the last 25 years and her friend can't believe it. She wanted her to explain why she disappeared without a word, but even Sera didn't know why it happened. Then she tells her that she looks very beautiful and that she's very happy for her success. Suddenly, her husband arrives. Tae-suk ended up marrying the actor who made her suffer 25 years ago. The same one Sera threw juice at. When they meet again, they don't recognize each other, but once they hear each other's names, they hate each other over what happened 25 years ago. Later, Sera and her friend grab some drinks. Sera asks, "What about him?" Her friend says it was because she got pregnant and had no other choice. Then she tells her that when she disappeared, they searched everywhere for her, even under the rocks. But it seemed like she herself had erased any trace. Afterwards, Sera tells her that she wants to act again because she really needs money, and acting is the only thing she knows how to do. Her friend offers to lend her money, but Sera says she can't repay it, so she needs to return to work. Her friend says the industry has changed and isn't the same. She recalls that even her husband struggles to get roles, but since she's her friend, she's willing to help. The next day, Tae-suk threatens her husband to get her friend a role or she'll stop giving him money. That's how she gets her first role after 25 years. Sera's role would be that of a housekeeper, and she would only have a few lines. Even so, she was very excited because she could act again after 25 long years. At night, Sera dreams about what happened on the night of the accident. Everything seemed strange. Everyone acted suspiciously when it was time to leave. She was alone except for the driver, who was hired by the one. Because of all that, Sera thinks it's very strange. as if her accident wasn't just a simple coincidence. But her mood quickly changes when she gets ready to go to her first day of filming. This time she takes public transportation and can't help but remember the old days when everything was easier. Meanwhile, Officer Cheol notices something odd about Sera's 2 accidents. That's why he tries to contact her, but Sera tells him she's about to start filming a series and doesn't have time to talk to him. Then we see that her friend's husband tells her they have to pretend not to know each other because she's a rookie and he's already a celebrity. So they shouldn't mix things up because they're on different levels. Sera laughs at him and tells him to stop saying so much nonsense. Later, her friend arrives and brings snacks to everyone from the new girl. Taisuk asks his friend why she doesn't use her celebrity name again. Sera answers that she doesn't want to cause a commotion, much less affect her friends. She wants to start over and build a new career. When it's time to perform, Sera does an excellent job. She still had her skills intact. Her gaze, her posture, and her way of acting were perfect. The director was so pleased he asked her to improvise a few lines. Hearing this, the lead actress becomes jealous. So in the next scene, she goes too far and actually hits Sera. What's more, she asks to repeat the scene, doing it over and over to hit her harder each time. Since this was her first role, Sera can only endure the hits. In the end, the director gets tired and tells her that the scene is done, but keeps filming just to keep hitting Sera. Luckily, Detective Cheol arrives and tells them that the scene is over. Everyone on set is speechless when he takes her away, as it resembles a dramatic scene. At the end of the episode, we see Sera stop at a place where they were selling soup. And interestingly, Cheol was there too. It turns out the place belonged to his mother. Sera was delighted with the food, but even more so because it was Cheol's mother's place. Also, she gave her a photo, and Cheol gave her a little souvenir for good luck. Continuing the story, even though Cheol meant well, Sera refused to leave. She knew missing that opportunity meant she couldn't perform again. That's why she returns to the set and apologizes to everyone, including the lead actress who hit her. But because she was arrogant, she scolds her for leaving early, and while apologizing, she falls. Luckily, Cheol arrives to cheer her up when her friend sees them together. Then she asks, who could he be? She says he's her manager, so she doesn't have to call him a nobody. He wanted to be found out, so he goes along with it. Then everyone goes to eat and drink. There, Taisuk reveals to us that Sera was actually interested in Detective Cheol, since he was exactly her type. Sera tries to deny everything. She says that never happened because she was very famous and couldn't date a simple detective. This makes Cheol feel resentful, and he says that the young detective wouldn't have wanted to go out with such a superficial girl like her either. At the end of the night, Detective Cheol asks her if she really trusts her friend Sera. She says yes, that in the past they were like sisters. But the detective warns her not to trust so easily, at least until her memory returns. The next day, Sera was chopping vegetables as usual. But because she had landed a role, she decided to leave her current job to focus 100% on acting. Her coworkers congratulate her for being so brave and wish her all the best. Meanwhile, Sera's niece needed to get permission from her mother or a responsible adult in order to start her internship at the company. But her mother didn't want her to become an idol, especially after seeing that her older brother had returned to acting. For her part, Sera receives the terrible news that she had been removed from the drama. Apparently, the lead actress had complained and pressured the production to have her fired. When Sera learns about this, she goes straight to the scriptwriter, leaving them no choice but to return her role. But she didn't want to see her, so Sera decides to sneak into her apartment. But when she arrives, she finds a very strange woman who apparently had committed a crime. Or is that what she said out loud? Sera? She gets scared and tries to escape, but the woman enters the elevator, so to defend herself, she hits her with a melon. But it turns out that woman was the screenwriter. She was just improvising, and that's what she had heard because of the misunderstanding. That's how they begin discussing the script she was working on. The screenwriter tells him that she really liked his work, but because of the lead actress, she had to end his role. She also confesses to him that she's tired of writing generic dramas and would like to give her story a drastic twist. Upon hearing this, Sera takes the opportunity and tells her that she could give the maid more prominence. That would be something nobody expects. She says it so convincingly that the screenwriter listens and returns her role the next day, now with more prominence. When it's time to shoot, Sera gives it her all. Because of that, her friend's husband gets jealous and ends up hitting her hard. Because of the blow, Sera recovered one of her memories. She remembers how they were confronting the man with the watch. Because of the memory, Sera doesn't react, so they take her to the hospital. Meanwhile, Detective Cheol manages to discover that a vehicle was watching everything on the day of the accident. That's why he decides to investigate further and ends up at a nightclub. But the manager quickly comes down to politely ask him to leave. The detective replies that he'll go after he finds what he's looking for. That's why he fights the criminals, but since he was a cop, they eventually leave him alone. Before leaving, he sees Do-won enter the club with a beautiful actress and decides to sneak in to see what's happening. He enters the very important person room and sees the beautiful actress without glasses. But unfortunately, he can't recognize her because the thugs catch him and ask him to leave without making a scene. Meanwhile, Sera wakes up in the hospital. Her friend was worried, but Sera explains she fainted after regaining a memory. Still, since Detective Cheol warned her not to trust anyone, Sera says nothing more. To find out if she could trust her friend, she asks her what happened the night of the accident 25 years ago because she was alone that night, when normally everyone would accompany her. Suk explains her manager was in the van because he said he needed to prepare a surprise party for her. When she learned about the accident, she rushed to the hospital and stayed with her sister. After learning about it, he chose to share his memory with her. He tells her that he was confronting a man with a very expensive watch, the same watch that the investor his manager introduced him to had. Apparently, he had his accidents weeks after meeting him. This was too much of a coincidence, so he had to find him to know the truth. That's why he needed Do-won to tell him who he is and where to find him. Tae-suk warns him it's a bad and potentially dangerous idea, but Sera had already made up her mind. So she asked Detective Cheol to go with her so he can protect her. Meanwhile, at Do-won's company, the security guards wouldn't let Sera in. They kept telling her over and over that she couldn't enter without an invitation. She keeps telling them over and over that she knows the owner and that he'll be happy to see her. But no one believes her, and they think she's crazy. When they threaten to call the police, Detective Cheol arrives and asks to be let in. As a result, they must inform the director. And when he finds out that Sera is at his door, he lets her in on her way to the office. Detective Cheol recognizes the famous actress from the club. That way, he realizes that Do-won might be involved in Sera's accident. To stay close and gather information, he tells the director he's Sera's representative and that negotiations must include him. Do-won agrees and happily tells Sera he's glad to see her, then invites her to eat. When Sera says she's cold, Do-won quickly offers her a blanket. As in the past, he did whatever she asked. Then Cheol began asking many questions. That makes Do-won start to suspect if he's really his manager because he seemed more like a police officer. To keep him from getting more suspicious, Sera gets straight to the point and asks him why he was alone on the night of the accident. Do-won knows she lost her memory, so he says she told him everything when she woke up 25 years ago. Hearing that, Sera decides to leave and wait until her memory returns. As she leaves, Do-won asks her manager for her number, but since he doesn't have one, he gives him a fake. On the road, Detective Cheol asks Sera why she didn't ask what he said 25 years ago. She replies that Do-won was lying, so there was no point in asking anything. She now wants to wait for him to regain his memory. Meanwhile, Sera's sister visits their father. He was watching his daughter's new drama but didn't recognize her in person. He does recognize her on television. Seeing this, her sister feels jealous because he doesn't recognize her. The next day, during the recording, Sera gets more prominence in the story. Her performance was so well received that the scriptwriter made her a main character. While filming, Sera has a scene where she must hit someone. She uses this chance for revenge, grabbing a radish and hitting her best friend's husband. The scene was so real and funny that it went viral. Everyone was talking about it. Sera's former co-workers congratulated her on quickly becoming an actress and gaining fame. They all asked her for an autograph. She also asks her for her autograph, but in reality, Sera had signed her permission to become an idol. Meanwhile, the club's gangsters went to see the truck driver, the one who tried to end Sera's life. They tell him to leave the country because a police officer is investigating them. He refuses and threatens to turn them in if caught. That's why one of the gangsters offers to pay him 10 times more. But if this time he definitely ends Sera's life, the criminal agrees and promises to leave the country after the job. At the same time, we see that Sera got a sponsor. The production wanted her to hit the co-star with a plunger, but her best friend's husband didn't want to be hit anymore, saying Sera hits him too hard. Because of that, he wants to quit, but his wife tells him he can't do it because he needs to make money. Also, she wants to take advantage of being viral to sell all her makeup. They did a live stream and within hours sold everything due to its success. That makes her competition furious. And while watching the video, Sera's former stylist realizes that the new rising actress is Sera. The next day, Sera goes to visit her sister. She promises to take care of their father's expenses from now on, and she'll also help with her niece's expenses. Her sister says it's unnecessary, but she appreciates the help. She says she must have suffered a lot while she was in a coma. Her sister says yes, but the one who suffered the most was their father. He was a wanted fugitive, but when he found out about his daughter's accident, he came out of hiding and went quickly to the hospital. Because of that, the police ended up arresting him, but luckily a young detective helped him so he could visit his daughter. When she found out that her first love helped her while she was in a coma, she decided to look for him to thank him. But just like Detective Cheol, no one knew who it was. For his part, Cheol discovers that the truck driver was very close to Sera's building, so he quickly goes to the place because he knew the worst would happen. It turns out that this time the criminal would end Sera's life in a 100% certain way. He kidnaps her and brings her to a remote place where no one can rescue her. When they arrive, he had everything prepared, but Sera manages to wake up and also remembers very well that she had trained for this kind of situation. All her preparation would now pay off. But when she tries to escape, everything was locked. So she has no choice but to hide. Because the place is so small, the killer quickly notices it. Luckily, Sera starts hitting him with a stick, so she's able to defend herself. But it wasn't enough to finish him off. In the end, the criminal managed to overpower her. But luckily, Detective Cheol arrived. He was a very good fighter and quickly managed to defeat the criminal, although he got stabbed in the arm in the process. Then the mobsters showed up, but the police had arrived first, so they had no choice but to leave, while Heejin watched the viral videos of the rising star. Because she disliked Sera so much, she recognized her immediately and knew her acting skills hadn't faded over the years. Here's what happened 25 years ago. After Sera disappeared, Do-won became Heejin's manager and got her all of Sera's roles. She agreed to do inappropriate things with the investor to ensure her success, unlike Sera, who refused even though it cost her career. When she finds out that Sera might come back, Heejin goes to Do-won to ask him if it's really her. The stylist was also there for the same reason, so there was no doubt. Sera had returned to the world of acting, but Do-won tells them not to worry. He will ruin her career again himself. At the same time, Detective Cheol tells Sera that her accident wasn't really an accident, but rather an attempted murder. The driver from the accident 25 years ago is the same one who just hit her and then tried to kill her. In other words, there's someone very powerful who wants to get rid of her at any cost. He also shows photos of the alleged culprit by looking at his watch. Sera recognizes him and tells the detective that she saw the same man both times she had an accident, confirming he was the culprit. With that knowledge, Sera wants to find him and make him pay for what he did to her. But Detective Cheol tells her that it could be very dangerous and he doesn't want to risk her life. Fortunately, Sera talks to him nicely again, and in the end, she manages to get his help. That's why the next day he goes to his superior to tell him that he will take a leave of absence since he needs to investigate a case thoroughly. This way, he will be able to dedicate himself 100% to being Sera's representative, and in addition, he will be able to earn a little extra money on his first day as a representative. Does he manage to get Sera a commercial? When he tells her, she gets really excited because her fame had skyrocketed in a short time. Would she soon be as famous as she was before? After finishing filming, she goes to the screenwriter to thank her for helping her career. She also thanks her. The series became a success, but even though it was successful, her dream isn't to write commercial scripts. She wants to write suspense scripts in the American style. It turns out she had already written many scripts, and many of them won awards, but nobody wanted to make them into movies. That's why Sera starts reading one and enjoys it so much she asks to take it home. While she waits for the bus, Do-won invites her for a drink and suggests she sign with him so he can get her better roles. Like before, Sera agrees to do it if he also hires her manager. She then asks about the investor he introduced her to 25 years ago, but Do-won says to forget him because he's already dead. The next day, we see that the criminal didn't want to testify. In fact, he was very calm because his boss had hired the best law firm. For his part, Do-won found the script that the screenwriter gave to Sera. After reading it, he said it was too good to go to waste. Sera and Tae-suk are celebrating after selling all their makeup. Her husband, as impertinent as always, asks why she hates the stylist if they used to be co-workers. Tae-suk says she can't stand her because she always looked down on her. She also remembers that after the accident, she was nowhere to be found. Months later, she started working with Hee-yoon. That was very suspicious. That's why Sera thought she might be involved. Meanwhile, Sera goes through the criminals things. Since she didn't pay the rent, the landlady packed up her things. That's how she discovers a lighter, but it wasn't just any lighter. It had a recorder hidden inside. The criminal recorded all the conversations with the guys who hired him. The detective urges him to confess, warning that if he doesn't, he'll inform the men who hired him that he recorded their conversation. The criminal feared them, so he agreed to tell the detective everything. However, as just a pawn, he didn't know much. Meanwhile, Sera heads to her new company's office. This time, the guards don't stop her, and everyone is very kind to her. Do-won seizes the moment and admits he read the script she left in his car. He liked it so much that he wants to bring it to the big screen, and he wants her to be the lead actress. Later, Sera informs the detective of everything. He was very happy because he would have 2 jobs. But he was worried about her, since he suspected that someone close to Sera was an accomplice in her supposed accident. That's why he gives her self-defense tools so she can protect herself if she's attacked again. Then they inform Sera that she will be paid in advance to do the commercial. That way, she won't be able to refuse. She was very happy because with the money, she could help her family. Together with her sister, they visit their father, who was senile and still ill. He recognizes his daughter because he saw her again on television, especially when they filmed the Sera commercial. It was supposed to be about a lady who can't lose weight, but she wouldn't be the main character since that honor would go to Hee-jun. When he sees how the others treat her, he realizes that the roles have been reversed. It's exactly the same as it was 25 years ago when Hee-jun did his first commercial. When Sera left, Hee-jun humbled himself to get her to stay and record. That's why he'll do the same thing this time. He expects Sera to humble herself and go after her, but Sera was too proud. He apologizes for treating her badly, but he refuses to humble himself before her. He also says her life must be pathetic, since she waited 25 years just for revenge. Hee-jun gets outraged and tells her not to say nonsense. Then the whole staff comes out and Hee-jun pretends that Sera attacked her when she saw how angry she was. Everyone thinks it's true. Because of the scandal, they want to find Sera, since she had received an advance payment and had to film the commercial at any cost. That's why Do-won tells her to do whatever it takes to convince Hee-jun. But Sera was too proud to beg him. That's why Detective Cheol decides to take charge. He goes to Hee-jun and finds her right in the lobby, which was full of reporters. That's why he takes advantage of the cameras to apologize on Sera's behalf, and, as she had asked, he even gets down on his knees and bows to ask for forgiveness. With so many cameras present, Hee-jun had to accept his apology, which led her to film the commercial. Since she was the main character, she makes Sera repeatedly fall until she eventually injures her shoulder. When he finds out, Cheol takes care of her and genuinely worries about her. Seeing this, Hee-jun can't help but feel jealous since she's never had anything like that. Time to go. Sera thanks Hee-jun for agreeing to film, but she tells her to stop pretending. She knows that she sent her manager to corner her and force her to accept in front of the cameras, but actually, Sera didn't know anything about this. That's why she goes to Cheol to ask for an explanation. He confesses that he knelt on purpose in front of the camera so Sera wouldn't have to do it. 2. He already knows how proud she is and how her manager should handle those kinds of things. Sera tells him that he shouldn't have done it. Alternatively, Cheol says it doesn't bother him, and he'd kneel 1,000 more times so she wouldn't have to. Then we see that the drama they were filming had ended and the whole staff gathered to celebrate. By then, Sera was already famous, with staff members asking for photos. This makes her best friend's husband jealous, and he starts calling her by her stage name. Sera tells him to be quiet or everyone will discover her. But then Detective Cheol arrives and says it's too late, as someone already published an article revealing her identity. When they try to escape, the reporters show up and start asking her all kinds of questions. But since she didn't even know what had happened in the last 25 years, Cheol decides it's better to run away and not answer any questions. Since everyone was looking for her, Cheol decides to take her to his house. Although it was a bit messy after cleaning up, he invites her in. Being alone made them nervous, so Sera admits to the detective that she's embarrassed to return. Can you imagine that her fans who waited for her for 25 years want to see her in better shape and not as she is now? Cheol tells her not to worry, that her fans are able to see beyond appearances and that they'll be happy just to know she's doing well. Then Sera takes a shower to spend the night there, and later it's the detective's turn, but by mistake, he got his clothes wet when he got out of the shower. He runs into Sera. She wants to act like nothing happened, but suddenly her towel falls off. When she sees such a huge snake, Sera gets scared and hides in the room. Then Cheol wants to talk to her, but Sera pretends to be asleep. Meanwhile, Sera's niece had found out about everything. That's why she complains to her mother for hiding that her aunt was a celebrity. The next day, the detective makes breakfast, but Sera refuses to eat. Because the press had been very harsh with her, they published several articles criticizing her appearance. Cheol tells her not to worry and that she should go eat instead. Later, Hee-jun goes to confront the director for including Sera in the next movie. She was given an important role, which is why he demands her immediate removal. Do-won says it's his project, so he decides who gets which role. Then Cheol arrives, hears all the commotion, and when he comes in, he gets the good news that Sera will be one of the main characters. He was very happy, but Hee-jun wouldn't give in so easily. So he tells Do-won that they should hold an audition so they can choose the right actress. Besides, that would attract people's attention and give the movie more hype. When Sera finds out about all this, she gets really happy because she would have a chance to shine on the big screen. She assures the detective she'll get the role no matter what. Later, she returns to her apartment, but the manager was very upset. Not because she disappeared, but because she showed up and never said anything to him. It turns out that he was a fan of Sera and was very excited that she had come back. Meanwhile, the truck driver threatens his lawyer to turn everyone in if she doesn't get them out of jail. She tells him not to talk nonsense and to take responsibility for his actions. When his bosses found out about that, they were very angry because there would soon be elections for a candidate, so they couldn't be involved. In a case like that, the guy with the blue watch was the boss of everyone. He orders them to get rid of Sera and the truck driver, but they must do it right this time, or the mobster will face consequences. When he learns about it, the mobster gets furious and orders his men to handle the two, leaving no loose ends. That's why the first one to fall is the truck driver. He supposedly had epilepsy, or so they claimed, but in reality, he was suffocated in his sleep. Though doctors revived him, he unfortunately ended up in a coma. Then we see that the stylist does a live stream, but Tasu comments from a fake account, asking her to talk about Sera. The stylist gets scared and immediately ends the live stream to ask him who he is and what he knows. It turns out that 25 years ago, she ended up in Hyeon's dressing room and, to her bad luck, overheard her giving instructions to get rid of someone. She was eventually discovered and has only worked with her since. The next day, Sera gives her younger sister some money, tells her she's sorry for not having helped her in these 25 years, but wants to make up for it from now on. When she hears that, her sister remembers what happened on the day of her accident 25 years ago. Because there was no responsible adult, the girl's education depended on her next exam. Sera got sick, so her younger sister had to donate blood to her. That's how she lost the opportunity to continue studying. The next day, we see Sera's niece going to another rehearsal, but since she joined late, her classmates tell her that she has to work harder so she doesn't delay her debut. Later, we see how that world was very shady. The company was just a front to get young girls for the old perverts. At night, Sera practices her script, but since the walls were thin. Being in this situation makes her very sad because her life was really miserable. Even so, she wasn't willing to give up. The next day were the auditions. Sera was the last one to go in, and that's why she was very nervous. Luckily, Cheol arrives and tells her to trust herself, just as it's finally her turn. We see that Hee-jun was one of the judges since she didn't want her to get the role. She tells her to improvise a scene, saying she's tired of seeing the same scripted performance. Sera was about to give up, but Cheol manages to enter the room and encourages her. Seeing him, Sera's inspired and delivers a phenomenal performance, even slapping Do-won. Because of that, the director of the movie applauds her and tells her that Sera has really come back. Hearing his praise, Hee-jun realizes that he really couldn't compete against her. The only reason she had become the best actress of her generation was because Sera was no longer acting. Watching the performance, Cheol was fascinated. It reminded him of Sera from 25 years ago, who had a unique aura. Although Sera didn't realize this, she thought she had done badly, but Cheol tells her that she did phenomenal and that she should trust in her talent. Later, Do-won meets the mobster. He acted as the link between Old Man Verde and Do-won. providing the funding that made the company so successful. Also, as he was ordered, he tells Do-won about Sera, but this time in a completely certain way. Do-won, tired of dealing with him, says he already repaid the money. But the mobster tells him that once you get into this business, there's only one way out, and that's by losing your life. Do-won replies that maybe he should find a new way and then just walks away. Even though he was angry, he knew the mobster was right. He wanted to use Sera and her popularity to keep himself safe, at least until he finds a solution. End of the audition. And now it was official. Sera would be one of the leads in the next big movie. And Yoon also heard the news and was very furious because, with her great talent, Sera would steal all the spotlight from her. The next day, Sera confesses to Chael that she wanted to lose weight. She wanted to relive her glory days and give her best to her fans, but couldn't afford a personal trainer. That's why he volunteers and helps her with her physical transformation. At first, Sera gets very discouraged because exercising is very hard, but she really wanted to become the old Sera again. That's why she starts training every day. In a short time, she managed to tone her body, and not only that, Sera also straightened her hair. When Chael saw her, he was captivated and bought her a beautiful necklace, but being shy, said it was from a sponsor. For his part, Do-won tells Hee-jun not to worry so much. Sera is no longer the same as she was 25 years ago, and she won't be able to overshadow her anymore. Why hadn't he noticed her before? At the press conference, she captures all the attention. Her transformation outshined not just Hee-jun, but the whole production. Hee-jun was very angry. That's why when she tries to leave, she trips over her dress and gets even angrier. And to make her even angrier, Do-won tells her that the sponsor of the dress now wants to sponsor Sera. Annoyed, she asks him to fire the stylist. When the stylist finds out, she confronts her and tells her to keep her word. After Hee-jun reminds her they made a deal to keep her secret, 25 years ago, he says much time has passed and no one would believe her if she spoke now. The stylist says she has proof of their deal and threatens to expose her unless she changes her mind. This is why the actress must apologize to her. Then we see that Tae-suk's husband had fallen asleep in the living room and had heard the entire conversation. He tells his wife everything he had heard. Apparently, they had something to do with Sera's accident, and there was also evidence of it, but he didn't hear anything else. The next day, Sera recorded. That's why Tae-suk tells him to win over the director before June does after recording. The director was thrilled with Sera's performance, noting her talent surpassed Hee-jun's. Besides, she was not only good at acting, but also as a person. Did that bother Hee-jun? After filming, Sera would say her performance wasn't enough and knew more practice would help her improve. That's why Detective Chol offered to rehearse with her. But no matter how hard he tried, he wasn't a good actor and couldn't keep up with Sera. When they finished, she told him he did well so the detective wouldn't feel bad. But he believes her and says that maybe he could become an actor. Later, Sera hears a girl crying in the bathroom. She notices a bruise on her wrist when she checks on her. Sera tries to talk, but her manager calls, urging her to finish her tasks before debut. She reminds her of her past self, because it seemed like she was going through the same thing that happened with that investor. When Sera offers her help, the girl simply rejects her. For his part, the detective finds out that no one knew what happened to the truck driver. All the guards were busy and none of them saw anything, meaning they turned a blind eye. The detective says the driver is alive and will expose them all when he wakes up. When the thug finds out, he orders his man to finish off the driver. Also with Sera, if he fails, he'll end up dead. Meanwhile, Sera's sister defended her from those who spoke badly about her. Here we discover a bit about what happened 25 years ago. Sera experienced severe depression and stayed in bed for a long time. So her younger sister cared for the family. The next day, Sera was supposed to record in Busan. Is that why she wants to eat at the same place where she dined with the detective she likes so much? But she thought the place wasn't there anymore, although Cheo tells her that the place is still there. Before leaving, he gets a call from the hospital saying the driver nearly died again. Luckily, they managed to save his life, so they decide to hide him until they catch the culprit. At night, Sera looks more handsome than ever. He tells her that they should practice a little to remember the old times. When the detective arrives, he sees them practicing and getting along well. As a result, he can't help but feel jealous. On his way to his room, he runs into Hye-yoon, who offers him a drink, and he accepts in order to try to get some information. But Hye-yoon couldn't handle alcohol, so after just one drink, she was drunk. That's why the detective must take her to her room. But in the elevator, he tries to explain things to her, but she tells him to have fun. The next day, Cheol tries to fix things, but because of Wonban, he doesn't have time to approach her. Seeing this, Tae-suk's husband tells him that in the 90s, Wonban fell madly in love with Sera, and apparently, those feelings haven't changed over the years. In other words, the only reason he agreed to shoot the movie was because he was still in love with Sera. Later, when they go to the restaurant, both of them were still angry. The same combination he made 25 years ago that makes Sera suspicious, but she didn't believe they were the same person. The detective explains how he ended up with Hye-yoon in the elevator, but this only angers Sera more, since she knows Hye-yoon was pretending. The detective also complains to her about being close to Wonban. Sera tells him they were just practicing. Because of that, she starts drinking, and the detective drinks even more when he finds out they'll have a romance scene. When they return to the hotel, he tells Sera that she should sleep in her room for that night. But it wasn't bad at all because the detective went to his room, meaning they just switched rooms. The detective knew that the killer would soon go after Sera, so he was going to wait for him that night. Later, someone enters Sera's room. Detective Hye-yoon was waiting for him and immediately fights him. Since he was very good at fighting, he manages to defeat him. But, unfortunately, the killer manages to escape. Because of that big scandal, the filming is stopped, and the next day, everyone returns to the city. Sera wanted him to tell her what happened, but Tae-suk's husband gets into his van and doesn't let them talk anymore. At the same time, we see that the owner of the Blue Watch was Assemblyman Min. He assisted the investor who tried to take advantage of Sera upon their arrival in the city. The detective had gotten sick, so Sera decided to go to his house to cook for him. Since the detective was in the bathroom, he must give him the password. That's how Sera realizes that her childhood love is the same detective, Hye-yoon, who has been helping her all this time. She found out because his password was the same phone number he called her from 25 years ago. When she wanted to tell him, she didn't know how, so she tried dropping hints to show she already knew everything. Didn't he notice? When she finishes cooking, he had fallen asleep. So Sera covers him up and fondly remembers how good he has been. Later, he returns to his apartment, and one of the girls tells him that the food he prepared was delicious. So she offers to give him a manicure. But suddenly, a lot of reporters enter the building. It turns out that they had spread the rumor that Sera was dating Wonban. The next day, she asks Do-won to tell the press the rumors are false. But he tells her that she has to pretend to date him to generate more media attention. Sera tells him that she won't do it, and Detective Cheol will take care of denying all the rumors. As they leave, they encounter Riley, the girl being sold with the investor. The detective suspects that something is going on, so they decide to follow her. But when he gets to the building, they don't let him in. Sera suspects Do-won is selling her, so she wants to wait until he comes out. At night, the apprentice leaves the building. Sera is scared, so she tries to talk to her. The girl didn't want to tell her anything, but Sera tells her that many years ago she went through something similar, so she offers her help. But the young apprentice suspects a trap, so she won't tell her. When the detective arrives, he tells Sera it's useless to talk to her since she's not the type to back down. It turns out that the detective had a similar case a few years ago. An actress was taken to an investor, he drugged and abused her. But the young actress reported the incident. Detective Cheol promised to help her and punish the culprit, but the investor was very influential and got Detective Cheol dismissed. When she found out about that, the young actress was terrified. So she took her own life. And apparently the investor is the same one who was behind this case. At the same time, the thug orders his man to end Sera's life once and for all. The next day, Sera tells Wonban that she's very sorry about the rumors that have been going around. But he tells her not to be so sorry because they might not be just rumors. When her best friend finds out, she encourages her to go out with Wonban, but she tells her that she's not interested in him. Someone else already has her heart. She realizes that it's Cheol and tells her that she can't trade Wonban for a mere manager. Sera tells her that he's a detective, that he's been helping her for a while, and because of that, she changes her mind and tells the detective that she's on his side, though he wanted to tell her Wonban loved Sera too. Before he can speak, her husband arrives, so he says nothing. At the same time, we see that Sera's sister had paid off her debts with the money her sister gave her. At the academy, she learns her daughter hasn't attended for days. Meanwhile, Riley feels nauseous. She appears pregnant, but no one realizes. At night, Sarah's sister finds out that her daughter was an idol trainee. That's why, furious, she tells her that she can't live like her aunt. Later, she confronts Sarah for signing the permission for her daughter to become an idol. She tells her she's a bad person and wishes she'd never return to her life. Sarah doesn't know why her once adoring little sister now hates her. She tells us that months after her accident, Sarah cut ties with her whole family. So, for the sake of her daughter, she will do the same. She never looks for her again. Later, her niece goes to Sarah's building and tells her that she wants to be an idol at any cost. That's why she left home to pursue her dream. With no family left, that's just how it is. Sarah, she asks her, "Who did you inherit that personality from?" Her niece answers that it was from her. The next day, she asks Cheol to keep their family relationship a secret. He didn't want to, but ultimately had no choice. When the girl arrives at the company, she meets Du-won, who praises her potential. His assistant then compares her to Riley. The young apprentice becomes curious when she learns Riley will work on her debut. She follows Riley and ends up at the building where Riley meets the investor. In the lobby, the guards ask her for her name and she pretends to be Riley, so they let her in. Meanwhile, Detective Cheol discovers that Assemblyman Mim is the one behind all of this, until he gets evidence. At that moment, he calls his partner and tells him that the criminals are on the move, so he's going to follow them. The detective tells him not to go alone, but his partner doesn't listen to him. At the same time, we see that Seok is talking to the stylist, using his skills to make her believe that Sera has regained her memory and already knows the whole truth about her. Scared, she admits to him the evidence is a 25-year-old audio recording. When she tells Sera about it, it turns out that the audio was at the hospital. But since Sera lost her memory, she didn't remember it. At that moment, Riley calls her and tells her that her niece was discovered. And that's why she got into serious trouble. With no one else to turn to, she asks her for help. Sera arrives at the building, but the guards didn't want to let her in, so she distracts them and manages to sneak in. Meanwhile, her niece is threatened with death, so she runs away, but since she doesn't know the building, they catch her easily. Luckily, Sera was nearby and tells her to hold on until the police arrive. Then, she manages to escape again and goes out through the bathroom window. That's how she manages to reach her aunt when they're together. They try to escape before Tazauk arrives with the police, but the guard catches them and tries to take the girl. Sera starts fighting with her and tells her niece to go to the lobby and ask for help. Once she gets to the entrance, Tazauk had arrived with the police. The girl tells him that her aunt is in danger, so the police are forced to intervene. But Sera had already suffered a strong blow to the head, and at the same time, Cheol's partner was about to be hit. Luckily, the detective arrives and beats up all the bad guys, but the boss of the thugs takes the policeman's gun. What he didn't know was that the first shot was a blank. So when they fire, it doesn't do anything to him. The detective defeats them, but their numbers allow them to escape. Sera is critically ill. When his sister finds out, she feels the same as she did 25 years ago. The detective also feels bad. At the hospital, he learns what happened. Sera's niece was feeling very bad, but Cheol tells her it's not her fault. When the detective investigates the building, he finds out that all the evidence had already been erased and cleaned up. Hours later, Sera's surgery had gone well, but now it was entirely up to her. Suddenly, a girl named Euron arrives. She used to live with Sera and had come to return her memories. We learned that over these 25 years, Sera suffered severe facial injuries. Her insecurities made her hide from the world, and she spent most of her life caring for her father. He was the only one who encouraged her to return to the world of acting. But Sera had already lost herself. She had become a social media hater who eagerly awaited her big return to the big screen. That's how 25 years passed without her noticing. No one recognized her, so she wanted to go in person to talk to the director, but her father was with her. The man told her he was cold and wanted to go home, but Sera didn't listen to him. She went after the director and left her father alone in that place. Because the man had dementia, he was run over. After that, Sera had lost everything. Her last chance and the only person who supported her. Because of that, she left her family because she was ashamed to look them in the eye. To try to ease her guilt, she gave them all the money she had and then walked away from them. Sera deeply regretted what she had done and didn't want to wake up anymore. But her friend told her she shouldn't give up, that no matter what happens, she must keep fighting. When she wakes, she immediately asks about her face. Since nothing had happened to her, she wants to start filming again. But the detective tells her she can't do it yet. Sera doesn't understand what's going on and asks him, "Who are you?" Everyone is stunned, thinking she had lost her memory again. But it was just a joke to break the ice. She then tells the detective she has regained her memory. Now she knows everything she did and also knows who is responsible for ruining her life. And, more importantly, she still knows why they did it. It turns out she wanted to report him for trying to kill her 25 years ago. That's why Assemblyman Mill silenced her again, to prevent her from ruining his house or political campaign. Detective Cho promises to reveal the truth, and for that he asks her to identify who attacked her. It turns out it was the Assemblyman's assistant. Sera identifies her and asks the detective to arrest her right away. He tells her they won't be able to do it because people might say she hit her head and is confusing things. That's why they need to gather more evidence, since Assemblyman Mill wouldn't be easy to defeat. But when he tried to catch the mob boss, they had already dealt with him. Apparently, the Assemblyman wanted to eliminate all loose ends. We then see the Assemblyman's assistant also accompany the one. He tells him to stay alert and keep his mouth shut because he could be in danger. At the same time, the detective asks Rayleigh to tell him everything he knows. She doesn't want to do it because her debut was coming up and that could ruin it. Since Sera was kind, she tells him the team leader knows everything and has records of all the girls they sold. She tells him to be a good manager and takes Sera to record again. At no point does he suspect that she has the documents that could ruin him. The next day, the prosecutor's office audits. And since they have the documents, one can't act. This causes a huge scandal. Sera was very scared, but the detective tells her to calm down because he will take care of protecting her. She tells him she already knows he was the detective who helped her 25 years ago. He becomes emotional. She kept her promise that someday they would see each other again. The next day, Sera returns to the student apartment. Here we find out that the girl who was helping him all this time was nothing more than an illusion. She was the only one who helped him when he had nothing, so he remembered her fondly. And since, unfortunately, she had lost her life, his mind refused to accept reality. The next day, he returns to filming. When he arrives on set, everyone is glad he's back. But Hye-jung pushes her for taking so long, and Tae-suk's husband also pushes her, so she doesn't mess with his enemy friend. When they start filming, Hye-jung really hits Sera. Sera suddenly starts laughing and tells her that's not enough. Then she hits her back and Hye-jung gets really scared. The scene looks very real, and Sera uses the moment to say she already knows everything. She discovered audio from 25 years ago of Do-won and Hye-jung plotting to take everything from Sera. That's why Hye-jung was so scared, because that would mean the end of her career. 25 years ago, she did sleep with the investor, and when she saw that Sera didn't, she lied to him and said she was going to report him. Feeling cornered, the investor ordered to get rid of Sera. Do-won didn't agree with that, but in the end, his ambition was stronger. But he was also the one who recorded the audio. He did it to protect himself, since the investor put him in charge of all his businesses. Back in the present, Hye-jung was terrified. And once again, she promises to finish Sera. But when she leaves the filming set, she lies again. She asks Sera not to ruin her life, and Sera tells her that's not the way to apologize. Hye-jung asks what she did wrong, saying she only did what was needed to escape her shadow. She calls herself the goddess of Cannes and the best actress of her time. Sera tells her that's not enough, that no. That makes Hye-jung lose her mind, and she starts yelling that she'll get rid of her. Just like 25 years ago, everyone starts recording her, and it quickly goes viral. Because of this, the assemblyman asks his assistant to take care of all the loose ends. Later, we learn the detective found out Do-won handed over the evidence. Apparently, he wanted to cause a scandal to get rid of the assemblyman and the thug who treated him like a dog. Then we see how Cheol was training Sera to help her recover faster after exercising. Did you see the news saying that he was taking illegal tranquilizers? That, along with the viral videos, had doomed his career forever. At night, the detective discovers the location of the second-in-command of the criminal gang. He was trying to flee the country. Fortunately, Detective Cheol manages to arrest him at the police station. He didn't want to confess anything. He knew they couldn't accuse him of anything without evidence, but the detective tells him that the truck driver is still alive. He also had audio of them discussing the crime. Since his boss died, he would be the only one to take the blame, unless he reports Assemblyman Min. The criminal hesitates at first, but Detective Cheel says his sentence could be reduced by a year or two. In the morning, Sera confronts him for sending her the audio and putting her life in danger. He claims he did it for her, but Sera knows that's not true. When she leaves, the police arrive to arrest him for selling his idols to wealthy politicians. Then, the stylist goes to Sera to beg for forgiveness, telling her that she's very sorry for everything that happened and that she had no other choice. Sera says if she's really sorry, she should apologize on social media, and the stylist agrees. What a twist, but her regretful and consequence of being a Plutonian condemns John. And now he's going to be accredited. Cheo's notebook warns him that he will still pay dearly for his crimes once he gets it. The dates and addresses matched Juan's testimony, so now he would have enough evidence to arrest Assemblyman Min. But even so, the chief of police didn't want to do it. That's why Cheo promises that he will take full responsibility. With that condition, they issue the warrant, and the assemblyman and assistants are arrested. Sera's sister was having trouble with her daughter. It turns out that Du Wan's company had closed, so she wouldn't be able to debut anymore. The lady was glad her daughter wouldn't live like her sister. The next day, she tells Sera everything. She tells her that she should let her daughter follow her dreams, since not everyone in the world of celebrities is bad. For her part, Hye-yoon had sunk into despair, and soon the only person who was with her was going to quit, since she didn't like seeing her in that state. Now Hye-yoon, Du Wan, and the others who hurt Sera are finally facing justice as they should have 25 years ago. Months later, Sera founded her own entertainment company, and she wanted her niece to be a part of it so that everyone could be at ease, since no one would take advantage of her if she was under her care. In addition, she had also hired her best friend's husband. She did it only because her friend invested money and wanted her husband to get more jobs. At night, Sera asks the detective to go with her to an important place. He agrees, not knowing where they'd go. On the day, it turns out to be the awards ceremony. Sera had been nominated for Best Supporting Actress and wanted Cheel to be in the front row watching her receive her second award. When she wins the award, Sera goes out to give her speech where she thanks her family and her neighbors from the student apartment. To her best friend and, above all, to Detective Cheel, she says that without their help, she wouldn't have been able to achieve any of this. Everyone was very happy, many even cried, and Detective Cheel was the first to clap like crazy. Her neighbors and family celebrate with her. When she returns to her seat, Cheol is already gone. During the press conference, people often ask Sera about the man she loves. She admits there is someone in her heart but won't reveal his identity. The journalists ask her to be clear, so they ask her what kind of relationship she has with her former manager. She says that they only have a professional relationship. Detective Cheel suddenly arrives and tells her he wants more than a professional relationship. She replies that she doesn't want that either, and then they both kiss. Let's say that happened in the drama. After 25 years, love triumphed. That's how it ends. I'm sorry it took me so long. I hope you liked this summary. Let me know in the comments what you thought. The ending was fine for me because it's a happy ending, and I like happy endings. I wish they had focused more on the revenge. But anyway, thank you very much for watching the video until the end. I hope you liked it. If so, please like and subscribe so you don't miss any videos. See you next time.